This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body, which is advancing coaching in business, society, and worldwide. I'm your host, Maisie Barlow, and in this new series, I'm delighted to introduce you to experts, coaches, thought leaders, and individuals who share their passion for working with young people. Our aim is to inspire and challenge the preconceived ideas we may hold, while dissecting and examining our intrinsic ability to show up for the generations of our future. Raw life experiences shape this series, getting to the heart of why working with young people truly matters.
Hello and welcome back to this podcast series, Coaching Our Future Generations. This is the final episode, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. My name is Maxine Bell and I'm the podcast manager for the AC. And what we're doing today is we're actually bringing back our host of the series, Maisie Barlow, to have a chat with us, because after listening to the recordings, we realised that Maisie had a lot of her own beautiful experiences with young people and with our hosts that were valuable, and we felt there was something important to share and to maybe bring together all the things that have happened in this series for you guys, because we've had very long episodes. So we've brought Maisie back. And just before we start, I just want to apologise. I'm recording and a storm has arrived, and you may hear some background noise during the recording. We'll try and edit out as much of it as we can, but I just wanted to give you a heads up and hope it doesn't disturb the listening too much. So welcome, Maisie, as a guest today.
Yeah, slightly different. Hello. It's lovely to be here.
It's really lovely to have you back on. I interviewed you for LinkedIn Live at the beginning of the series, and we sort of touched a little bit about some information on yourself, but it really felt like there was a deeper conversation to have with you. So I'm really interested to see where we go today. But before we start, do you want to just tell people a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a massive question. I never know where to begin. So I suppose where I'm at right now is that I am back up in the Midlands, which is where I'm from, though I've spent sort of here, there and everywhere, kind of all over the world, really. And I'm currently studying in London to become an integrative arts psychotherapist. I sort of do creative well-beings type things. So I like to incorporate the arts in sort of what I do. That can look like anything from, I don't know, sort of writing poetry to making puppets to just being with other people. So I think I sort of facilitate space for people to explore more about themselves and the world around them. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, and sort of a bit of where I'm headed as well.
Because arts therapy is a step deeper than coaching, certainly with creativity, which is powerful in itself. But art therapy is quite a deep and profound experience. So, and I know from my friend who's training in music therapy that it's a deep process to even do the training. So well done you for being brave enough to do that.
Yeah, lots of deep diving.
And just before we start talking about young people, what's kind of got you into that space of wanting to do that kind of work, to create space for people and to help people? What in your own journey has kind of brought you here?
I'd say it's a sort of culmination of a lot of things. I probably wanted someone growing up as a young person to, have to create the space for me. I went through quite a lot of sort of difficult experiences growing up, and I think something, and this is no sort of fault of anybody in my immediate family or my life, but I didn't have that specific person to kind of work through at a depth that I was at. I think to be able to meet people in something that is really quite a deep place is something that I've always craved, and I like to have conversations. I think probably listeners will have heard how deep I go with people, and I think through sort of craving that for myself, I found myself in areas where the sort of helping spaces seem to be having those conversations. And I think also, I mean, the real reason that I got involved in this is through Darren Robson, who actually brought the team together for the AC podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he did.
And sort of championed it and made it happen. And he was a sort of shining torch in my life, or he was as we like to say, the invisible hand that kind of kicked me up the backside when I needed it. And when I was a bit lost myself, so I was a little bit lost. I was changing careers in sort of 2019 and thought, yeah, what on earth am I doing? And I actually did his training, so the Mo Foundation training to become a certified coach. And that gave me the sort of impetus and the perspective and the sort of eyes open moment to go, oh, actually, there's a whole industry here that I could explore, that I'm going to meet people maybe a bit like me, but also help people that maybe want to, go a bit deeper. So I think that might answer the question in a roundabout way.
No, it does, because as you know, Darren was an invisible hand for me too. This is how we met, because he put us in a group of deep diving creatives, if that is the word. So that's how we knew each other, and that's how I contacted you to host this podcast episode, because it's a topic, young people is a topic I'm passionate about. We wanted somebody who had that same passion and that same bravery to go and deep dive, because Darren was the same. And if any of you've listened to his interviews, either for the AC or for Mo, you'll know his kind of own questioning was that way. So lots of like-minded souls. But yeah, that's a really interesting point you made, though, about that in some sense there was a loneliness in your childhood because you were different from the people around you, that there was that you were more of a deep diver, and maybe other people weren't choosing that. So yeah, I can relate to that sense of a loneliness, and I'm sure we're not the only ones.
No, 100%. Yeah, it's an interesting place to be. I think I sort of tell the story of when I was about 6, actually, and realised that I was alive. So I sort of looked in the mirror and went, I was in the bathroom, my mum was in the shower, and I looked in this mirror and I went, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing here? And all of these sort of questions. It was almost like a wake up of consciousness. And my mum, she recounts the story and sort of rolls her eyes and is like, oh dear, we've got a deep thinker. And I think that's always been me, is to kind of ask those questions and dig a little deeper, and not necessarily to understand, even just to explore, I think is a place that I've found myself a lot. Yeah.
Stephen Russell said that curiosity is our superpower, didn't he, in his interview with you? So,
so right.
I agree with him on that statement. Do you agree with him that curiosity is a superpower, and why do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think it's something that we're sort of taught on our course, in the course that I'm doing at the moment, but it really is something that I think everybody has the power to yield. I think curiosity almost eliminates judgment. It eliminates us and them. It eliminates a power dynamic, because if you really are truly curious as to what's going on for another person, and sort of holding them in mind compassionately, of course, and then there's nowhere that you can go, or you've just got to keep going. So you've got to keep going. If you continue to be curious, then the conversation continues. So it's it's as simple as open and closed questions, which, anyone in the sort of coaching professions will understand what that means. Probably most people that aren't will understand what that means, but curiosity goes deeper. I keep using the word deep, but it goes to a place where we're allowed to journey into somebody else's world. And I think that's a true privilege when we are allowed to do that with another person. And so, it being a superpower, of course it is, because it scrubs away prejudice. It scrubs away, anything you might think about a person, and allows you to be with another.
That's an aspect I hadn't thought of before, actually, that it does get rid of judgment, because you're open when you're curious. When you're judging and you're prejudiced, you're closed. So it's opening up of your soul in a way to be curious. And I was thinking as well that without curiosity, we wouldn't have computers, we wouldn't have planes, we wouldn't have wheels even, maybe. It's curiosity and inquiry that moves us forward.
And in that respect, I think it's it's also this idea of creativity. So I think some people might get a little bit alarmed when I say, oh, I do sort of creative coaching. What I mean by that is that I am so curious that we can actually look at it from any angle. And yes, we can use tools like painting, poetry, dance, movement, all of those things. We can use them, but that's not to say that we are tied to them, because I think true creativity is curiosity. And innately, everybody on this planet is creative. Whether that's in mathematics, whether it's in science, whether it's in, art.
Accounting.
Accounting. Well, yeah. Because there's a creativity to the human condition. Yeah.
Yeah, I think curiosity is an innate thing, as creativity is. And actually, somebody early on said that creative coaching and creativity isn't about using tools; it's a state of being. Which ties in with what you said, about curiosity being a natural state of creativity. So, fantastic. Well, that's really interesting. I love the way these conversations slightly go off in a different direction than what you planned, but it's a wonderful topic because it relates very much to working with young people. Yeah. Because as you've stated, that there's an aloneness when you feel a bit different. And so many young people often feel, all of us go through phases of feeling like we're different, we're odd, we don't fit in, where do we fit in? And so when you're working with a young person, being curious and have them feeling that from you, they feel seen and they feel heard, don't they?
Yeah, I think it relates back to that openness as well, because I think, and that's a thread actually that sort of weaved its way through the journey of, all the different people that I've had on to talk to, is this idea of like showing up and being open and not closing yourself off and not presenting something that is inauthentic, not to use we've talked about the word authenticity, but not to close yourself off and not to show up as, I'm going to fix you and do this thing for you and meet you on your level and be, jazzy and cool and hip and trendy. I think it's more, let's dissolve all of that and actually just show up open and honest and real.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I was just thinking I worked with young people for a long time, but for me, trying to be cool would just be hilarious. And I know I wrote a rap poem once and I performed it for my son, and I can remember him raising his eyebrows, not so much at the words in the poem, but more mum trying to be cool. It's just, I've never been cool. I don't think being cool takes effort actually anyway. I think you're either cool or you're not cool. But that's the idea that to work with young people, you've got to turn up with a cap turned backwards on your head and try and with your moving your hand in that. People can't see what I'm doing, but that kind of hip thing that goes on is a very false misconception, completely wrong. Yeah. And our guests have reiterated again and again and very much demonstrated it in their interviews that they're real. They want to be real. They know that's what works with young people. And also exploring what being authentic really means, because that word does get bandied about. And I think some people almost think they're being authentic when they're in a facade. I'm being an authentic business person with this way I'm presenting myself, but that's not what we mean, is it?
No, I'm going to say it's deeper again. It is. No, it's a funny thing you say. I mean, we show up in so many ways, but I think, the work that I'm doing, this sort of integrative model that I'm working from, is all about gathering up all the different parts and making them a whole. And that is, as we've just said, showing up as all of you. It's, the bits that we don't like, it's the bits that we do like, it's the bits that we find, engaging, it's the bits that we find quite shameful, it's the bits, it's all of those parts and all of those aspects of self, and showing up in that way. Yeah, not just as, I'm Maisie the businesswoman today, and I'm going to do a podcast and talk like a robot because I'm denying all of this other part of me that, has so many different facets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was just thinking back to your guests, as far as authenticity came, I think, like I said, I think they demonstrated that they didn't put on any accents. They didn't hide their opinions on quite strong topics at times, did they? And they were vulnerable enough, some of them, to share some of their lived experiences. Yeah. And I think it was it Halim who said lead with vulnerability,
Yeah.
which I thought was a lovely term. And he wasn't meaning you turn up blubbering and doing a sad story kind of thing. He was just saying that the way he connects with young people is to turn up and tell a little bit of his own story, because then their ears prick up. They go, oh, right. Yeah. So he's not saying to him, I have exactly the same experience as you, but he's saying, I went through something similar. I was into drugs and alcohol and I was lost and I've turned my life around. That's much better, he said, than when he goes in with statistics.
Yeah, definitely. I thought his interview was really beautifully, well, it was a beautiful interview. I think it and like you say, it touched on that areas where he got it wrong, and being able to assess where you're doing it wrong. And like you say, identify, oh, actually, yeah, this doesn't work, or the statistics might sound cool and, be what the people want, people being the kind of teachers and, whoever's booked you. But actually to tap into connecting with those young people, you've got to be you, and you've got to show, not I've been where you've been, because we've never been where anybody else has been, but I've walked a path that could be quite similar to yours. There are moments in there that people can see themselves. I mean, this is why we watch Netflix and read books, and because we like to look at Instagram. We like to get lost in other people's stories, but we also like to see ourselves in them. And I think that's why sort of social media has been such a big thing, especially for the young people, because they're looking for someone that represents something that they feel. And I think Halim is a great example of someone that's doing it online, that just speaks his truth and is one of those presences online that is a force for good.
He's also, for me, when I was listening, because he's 22, he's just 22, I think, isn't he? And he very much, for me, demonstrated one of the prejudices against young people is that you're younger, you know less than I do because I'm 50 or 40 or whatever. And also because he brought up this issue that a lot of young people don't think that their voice is valued or people want to hear them. And yet he demonstrated intense wisdom at times in his interview with you, didn't he, as a young person?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's like I've just said, it's ridiculous really to think that in fact, I was having this conversation at the weekend, it's ridiculous to think that we have ever been through what somebody's been through, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, anything. We just haven't. And we never can experience. We can experience something similar, but it will never be the same. And I'm really passionate about holding on to that, because I think sometimes we lose ourselves in our own sort of ego and thinking, oh, well, I've seen it, I've been there, I've done it, I've experienced that, so I know. And actually, we don't. As soon as we surrender and say, I know nothing. I think it's a Socrates quote, isn't it? I don't know the actual quote, but it's something around not knowing anything. And as soon as we surrender to that and allow ourselves to just be with another human being and be with them in that experience, whatever it is, that's the kind of deep connection that we are all longing for, I suppose.
Yeah, it's recognising somebody's unique experience, because we've got unique personalities, so how we even experience is going to be individual to ourselves. So and it's a very arrogant place to stand and say, well, I know how you felt. That's not to say it doesn't help to be with people that have had similar experiences, and certainly obviously Stephen, who was brought up in the care system, when the kids that he works with, the young people that he works with, hear a little bit of that from him, then they do listen more to him, because they know he's going to get some of it at least.
It's like a similar language. So it's like, especially things like the care system, if you've been through something that is so rigid, I want to say heart-wrenchingly painful, difficult, then you know the failures, you know the downsides of it, because you've been there. And I think it's really important to, on the flip side of what I was just saying, like we said, share your own story, like Stephen did so beautifully, share that you've actually experienced that. I think Ashley was the same. He had been through things as a young person and really showed up for, or still shows up for, these young people and gets it because he was the naughty kid.
I think I saw on Stephen's website, he calls it, he turned his pain into purpose.
Yeah, beautiful phrase.
And very beautiful phrase. And I used that in the podcast title because I loved it so much. But also it's something I think you've obviously can relate to with your own story. And I certainly can relate to why I work with young people. I was turning my own pain into purpose, wanting to give to young people something that I didn't have, whether it's a role model or mentor or whatever, however that looks.
Yeah,
it's very powerful. And just on that point as well, I was thinking we talked about that, but we didn't maybe touch on this so much in your interviews. But there's a flip to that if you work with young people and you have a story, my own story is my childhood was quite traumatic. And I noticed when I first started working with young people, it triggered flashbacks, it triggered some stuff. And I needed to be very self-aware, to have supervision and things like that when I was working with them. So I think that is maybe a challenge of working with young people, is that even more than with adults, it can bring up some of your own stuff.
Definitely. I think there's a beautiful theory actually that transactional analysis, which looks at, it's called the PAC model, which is the parent, adult and child.
Oh, yes.
And it's really interesting. It's incredibly simple. Obviously, it's much more complex if you want to go into the complexity of it. But it's really a really simple way of looking at, and of almost self-supervising, I suppose, is where am I operating from? Am I an adult in this situation? And therefore, here in the here and now, I'm being very present. I'm with you and I'm able to hold you. Am I being a parent? So am I telling you what to do? This is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. Or maybe even a nurturing parent. Oh, that's really such and such. And which, is valid, but interesting and good to keep in mind. And then also the child. So in fact, I notice when my voice changes, there's a real shift in my vocal cords even, and my voice becomes really childlike. And I can feel the fact that I've shifted into this place of, and it's really interesting for what you were saying about sort of supervision and things. My therapist will say to me, at what age are we right now? Or, I've had therapists sort of say, I've seen a little person, or what age is that? And it's just a really important thing to reflect on and hold in mind when you're working with young people, because you will be pushed into a state of feeling like a child yourself. And actually I was watching a video just the other day, and there's a lovely man talking about just his children, interacting with his children, and the fact that they can really get you and throw you out of awareness and really push you into being a 10-year-old yourself, and you want to have this argument and you want to fight back, and you it's holding it in mind, and it's being aware, as you said. It's saying, okay, what's going on, and is there something that I do, like I said, my voice, or is there something that's maybe giving me a hint as to where I'm at right now in this interaction?
That's it. I think there's a lot of parents pricking their ears up on that as one as well. I think that's a really good, simple model to look at. And if those of you who don't know it, I would suggest looking it up, because I think that's a great model to work with when you're working with anyone, but particularly with young people. But even functioning day to day, maybe politicians need to adopt that one as well. If you look at the Parliament, sometimes I'm like, it's like watching a bunch of 3, 4, 5-year-olds all screaming at each other to get the cookie. It's very, very strange. So it is very simple and very powerful model, and a very great thing. And certainly as I've increased in my own self-awareness, I often can go, oh my goodness, I feel about 7 right now. I need to, go off on my own and just process this till I come back as an adult. So, with compassion, you need to have compassion for yourself in those spaces too.
Definitely.
So, Was there anything else that's as a thread that ran through your interviews that really stood out for you?
We've sort of covered the authenticity. Although it's such a big topic, I'm sure we could go deeper and further with it.
You can say something more on that if you like to.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it was about sort of connection, and I think we explored where young people are at in the world today, and I think it's sort of what we've already said, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's so important. Really being aware of where the world is for our young people, and that we have no idea.
No.
I think we touched on it with quite a few of the guests, but this idea of just the pace of the world and the pace of kind of technology and artificial intelligence, and things are being shaped and molded and changed at such a rapid pace that actually that idea of really connecting with young people and not just putting them in front of a screen to do their learning is so important. And I think there was not one guest that said, oh yeah, and when I deliver things online it's so much better. I think there was always this idea of like being embodied, being a person for the young people, and whatever you're doing with them, really being with them. And I think that doesn't have to be sitting across from them eye to eye, because I think actually that's sometimes a little bit scary for young people.
Yeah, I've worked with young people where some of them might be neurodiverse, for instance, and that we're better sitting side by side, or even there was one person who wanted to sit back to back before they opened up, and that was fine. So they talked a lot about the ways to connect with young people, didn't they, as well? And the authenticity was part of that, about being real. And I think I agree with you. It is so important to just be really present. Like there to be no one else or nothing else but what's going on with you and that young person, that space, because they can feel, and you may be the first person that's paid them that attention. Because of the speed of everything that goes on, because of different things going on in the home with social media, and everything's instantaneous and reactionary, when you're suddenly with someone who actually is really looking at you, kind of not directly, and is with you and really listening and really wanting to know you and is curious about you, that's such a world away from a lot of the day-to-day, minute-to-minute experiences that young people have right now.
Definitely. I think Paul and I spoke about this sort of analogy of sitting alongside them and driving the car with them. And that was, I mean, if you listen to that episode, and it's full of sort of creative analogies and metaphors. Because
he's got a wonderfully neurodiverse brain as well, didn't he? And so, it was amazing to listen to him. Yeah.
But this analogy of actually being in the car, in the passenger seat with your own controls, so you can put the brakes on if you need to, but you're helping someone learning to drive. And I thought that was a really beautiful way of kind of explaining it and being really truly with someone, because you've got to pay attention to the road ahead. You've both got to be eye on the road ahead, but also really engaged with that person. And then also I thought Simone really talked about, so she does some work with two young people, and the insight that they get from one another when they're sort of bouncing off each other and they're with her was just, it kind of blew my mind, to be honest. I was like, how have I not even thought of that? So but it gave such a different flavour to allowing space and allowing them to sort of fall on each other, rely on each other, tap into one another and what they could really gift each other. And she was sort of there just to bring the curiosity and strike the conversation.
It was amazing. That was a wonderful start to the series. God, there's so many places I can go with that now. I was just thinking as well that an unexpected theme, but maybe not unexpected, but a natural theme that came through as well, was the impact of culture on young people. And that ranged from the racism that Simone talked about right through to cancel culture. And this demonstrates some of the pressures that young people are living in that certainly my age didn't experience. And we had our own things, but this is a whole new ball game, isn't it, with the way culture is at the moment and the impact on that, and that racism and misogyny still exist and all these things are still there.
Definitely. I think it's just made me think actually about, I think a lot of the episodes we talked about kind of kids that have not had the best start in life, or they've, been through some struggles, or they've been, on the edge of being kicked out of school. I think it's really important not to leave behind the ones that seem to have it all.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we explored it fully, but I really want to bring it to today's recording, because I think it's really important, especially our young men, that there's a space for them to exist and to not feel like they're going to be cancelled, to explore what it means to look after our young women. I think Halim's shared something really beautiful in the podcast that we did with him. And yeah, it's just really important not to leave a demographic out. And yeah, that's kind of encapsulated in the cultural things, is like we tend to focus, I think, on those that have really got something going on, but actually it's all of them. It's all our young people that we need to keep an eye on, because it's a difficult world, really difficult world to be sort of being brought up in at the moment, I think.
And can we just, on that note, can we just explore cancel culture a bit more? Because I don't know if everyone's really aware of what that means. Halim brought it up very emphatically as the thing that all young people are most scared of is being cancelled. I mean, I've got an idea of what that means, because I had a friend who was cancelled, and it shocked me what that actually meant, how vicious and evil some of it was, and how potentially devastating and how traumatizing it was for her. Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about what cancel culture could mean for maybe a minimal to maximum kind of state, what you think that means for young people, how they see that?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when we talk about young people, and sort of, I'm thinking more in the teens, but your image is everything. You're trying to, at that age, fit in. You're making that sort of step away from your parents, and really, and this is only my perspective, and my experience, I suppose, you're trying to find your identity. You're trying to find out who you are. And with the fact that part of that is now projected online, so we're sort of creating these almost avatar states. we're putting parts of ourselves forward facing online for the world to see. I think there's this fear, and rightly so, I suppose, because it's the reality of it. There's a fear of saying or doing the wrong thing, and for that to be taken wildly out of context, and for your whole identity to become this thing, and to sort of, your whole identity to be determined by this one thing that you might have said, that you might have done. And it is devastating, absolutely devastating for anyone to go through, because it reduces the complexity of you as a human being down to a single thing, and then disregards the rest. So that's my understanding of it. And you can sort of see why the young people are so petrified of what might happen.
Yeah, because at that age you're so vulnerable, and you're so unsure of who you are, as you say. And I think it goes to the extreme of death threats and people being told to suicide, doesn't it? I mean, it's absolutely vicious. So it's a bit different. It's bad enough when it happens as an adult, but normally by that time you've got a few little foundational roots, at least, of some sense of self, or some aspects of resilience. But for young people, that's not there yet. And so
no, it's still being formed. Yeah.
So if you take away that external environment that they kind of are feeding from and relying on, and whatever, that's challenging. But that's also actually another reason why coaching and mentoring potentially is so important at that young age.
Yeah.
Because that's what Halim was saying, wasn't he? About if you're like sort of, I think, was it bamboo he talked about, which is one of the strongest substances on earth, and yet it has flexibility. So he was talking about that need for strong roots, and that's where coaching and mentoring, or listening to inspirational speakers or whatever, having good role models can play a part. So potentially a very powerful area where coaching and mentoring can help.
Yeah, it's having that other to see you, like not fully formed and not just the part. I think it's the parts thing again that I was talking about, not just the part that you're presenting, but all of you. Because I think, when you're a young person, it's still being formed, and it's still, I've got the image of sort of saplings. They're not established yet, and they're still being worked out, and they're still, wondering whether they can thrive here, or whether this is, the soil for them, or whether that part's going to take charge and be bigger and stronger. And so it's sort of tending to them in a really gentle way, and seeing each bit as valuable as it, the other,
and teaching them to get their value from within themselves, and not rely on that external environment ultimately, isn't it? Which is something we all need to learn. Starting those initial building blocks of, I am an individual, and maybe I do have that strength, and maybe I am good. And again, Halim is a good example of somebody who thought, what makes me me? What am I good at? What am I passionate about? And how can I utilize that? And he's now doing that in his own career, isn't he? He's taken that and is learning and living in that experience, and still developing. It's not like any of us are finished pieces of work.
No, I thought Felicity was the similar, talking about her experience and following down a path that she thought was the right thing to do, and kind of getting to a point where she went, actually, what do I want? No one's ever asked me what I want. And when she started asking those questions, everything changed for her. She moved country, she quit her job, she left a relationship, she left her friends. Everything shifted. Yeah, it's important, really important to be someone to ask those questions.
Yeah, it's a powerful question. What do you want? If it was just completely up to you, you could really imagine anything that you could do. What do you really want? Not what you think other people want you to be, but what do you want? It's that similar question of, if you could dream a life in 10 years' time, what would you be doing? Most of us were never asked that. Not in that way. We might have been asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? Which is a very different energy than what do you want? Because what do you want encompasses your whole life, doesn't it? Whereas what do you want to do implies that you are just what you do, rather than what you be.
Yeah.
When you say, what do you want to be? It can include, I want to be a kind person. It includes other things besides just the jobs, the work stuff. It brings a lot of emotion up in me to hear, if you say that in the right way, what do you want? There's a softness to it, an openness that's rather lovely.
Yeah. And I think it's something that we continue to ask ourselves. I know that I'm still asking myself daily.
Me too, and I'm 57. Well, I've just said that out loud in public.
No, I think it's
no bias, please.
Interestingly, that's a big thing that came up, isn't it, in the series, is the sort of bias and the ageism and we touched on it a minute ago. But there is no right age to do this, to work with young people. There's no right age to ask yourself, what do you want? We can still be asking ourselves, draw a map, draw something, meditate on it. But if everybody else didn't exist, I think that's the key one for me. And I think in the sort of helping professions, we often, I want to say, determine our value in relation to another. So in relation to what we're doing for young people, what we're doing for our clients, what we're doing but if that's all stripped away, it's really, really important to ask. So what do we want? So
let's look a bit more at the ageism thing. I think that comes on two sides: what you think you know about young people as an older person, but also that you think you have to be a young person to work with young people. And I was my early 40s when I started working with young people, so I can bang that one on the head straight away. But what would you like to say about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because in a lot of ways, the work that I've done with young people, I did a contract with Sony Music where I took on some of the interns that were kind of going through their internship program as clients, and we had a few coaching calls throughout the year. And I think one of the reasons that I was chosen, though I hadn't done much work with young people before, one of the reasons I was chosen was because of my youthful energy. And at the time, obviously, I was quite young. I was in my sort of mid-20s. So it's an interesting one because I think I was chosen because of that. I was chosen because I was young and could probably, relate to them and things like that. But actually, when it came to working with them, it didn't matter. But that just disappeared. And I know a coach that just springs to mind, actually, who's a lot older. And the work he does with young people is astronomical. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't, as long as you're there, you're open, you're willing. And I want to say you've looked in the mirror at your own experience. I think it really helps to do that. And if you haven't, you run the risk of tripping up because of the things that we've sort of said, like, you become a child yourself, or you become the parent.
Turn into parent,
Yeah.
I think condescension is one of the worst things, and a young person is going to turn their back on you if you go in with a superior attitude that you know more.
Yeah.
You might know more on certain issues, but that's not the attitude you need to go in with as such. That's some quiet little thing you just have as part of your being that you might have had more experience. But for my experience, in the end, it was about me being real.
Yeah.
And sometimes, occasionally, it was about me sharing a very brief thing about my own story that helped me connect with them. So I worked with a group of young women once who we were talking about different issues, and the issue of eating disorders came up. And I waited and listened for a while, and then I told them that I'd had an eating disorder when I was younger, from the age of 11, for many, many years onwards, quite severely. And I said to them, if you have that issue, any of you, start looking at it now. Don't wait. And explained why. I didn't go into lots of detail. I didn't go into why I had an eating disorder or any of that stuff. But through me being open, that lunchtime, 3 girls came in and told me what was going on, and then we were able to get them help. So again, it's that just being real, sharing sensitively and appropriately, little bits sometimes that will help them see that you kind of get some of what they're going through. Like you say, not the same experience, but it does help sometimes. I think that's a key quality. And also, they're going to know if you're really interested. If you're interested, if you're open, you're curious, if you're being real, to me, that's the main qualities, I would say.
It humanizes you.
Completely. And to have this ongoing curiosity from the point of view of your own self as a student and what you learn from them. Because I don't know about you, but I learned so much from them. And without that arrogance and without that condescension, and just an openness and a love for them, actually. That's what I felt. If you can have empathy and notice some of their pain, even if you don't fully understand it, but you notice their pain, you can see they're struggling with their identity or their sexuality or whatever is going on, and you can sit and just listen. And for me, I always had pens and paper and crayons and stuff on the table, so if they didn't want to talk, they could doodle. We got some great conversations from those doodles, honestly. It's very special, I think.
Yeah.
To be allowed into their world.
Yeah. I think we touched on it with Katrina as well, didn't we? About this idea of actually giving young people, children especially, something to do whilst trying to navigate something. Because actually, I can't remember the phrase actually, but it's something like dipping. It might not be dipping, but it's something like dipping, where you are, because of the development of the brain, the child actually benefits from jumping in and out of. maybe it was puddle jumping.
I can't remember actually. I'm sorry, we're not very good. Yeah.
No. Well, it was something like that, and it was essentially this idea that children. I remember reading a study about children that had been given bicycle pedals on their desks at school. And they'd done this study and said, and loads of people thought, oh, no, it's not going to work because I'll be distracted and they'll this and that. No. And their attention span increased. This sort of skyrocketed because they had the ability to dip in and out. And actually that's at that age, the way that, at a young age, that's the way that the brain holds and retains information. And we can't quite understand that as adults because our brains are different. We've developed further, and so I think we really need to pay attention as well to the fact that yes, we don't know what's going on for a young person because our brains are different.
No, I mean, to be honest, doodling got me through school, especially because of the trauma at home. I think that was part of it, and I think I used it. Funny enough, I was an English teacher briefly. That's another life. And I got told in this class I was given, watch out for this guy. Let's call him Joe, for instance. Watch out for Joe. He's trouble. He's this. He's whatever. And I went in and thought, well, let me find out who Joe is myself, for starters. And I remember meeting this young man, and he was very restless. He kept getting up to the back of the classroom. He couldn't sit still. And I didn't say anything the whole lesson. And I spoke to him afterwards, and we had a chat, and I discovered he was one of 5 boys, and I heard about his family life. We came to an agreement that if he could doodle while I was teaching, let's see what happens. So he always had a piece of paper, said, as long as you sit near the front of the classroom, near me. And we had an amazing lessons with him after that. He was engaged. He'd put his hand up. He asked questions, and he did all that while creating these incredible doodles. Which were really drawings, actually. There was 2 things. One, somebody took the time to hear his story a little bit, and 2, somebody gave him the chance to be an individual. And I think I maybe did that intuitively because that is what got me through a lot of my school, was secretly doodling in my textbooks or on pieces of paper. Yeah. So, and I found that with working young people, it was always good to have objects, even if it was something they picked up and played with, stretched, elastic bands, whatever it was. It helped. It did. And there were no rules about what they want to do. So this is what's also wonderful is I like that quirkiness. I like that creativity in young people. I like seeing what they do. And in fact, why pick up that particular object even sometimes is a good question. Why did you pick that up?
Yeah.
Well, it turns into a whole story.
Oh, definitely. It's it's definitely the thing that's sort of ringing in my head from what you've just said is the permission to just be. And I think it came through in some of the episodes as well as like this autonomy over oneself, because actually as young people they're being told you've got to go to school, you've got to do this, you've got to pass your exams, you've got to go to violin practice, you've got to such and such, you've got to do your chores, they're constantly being told what to do. So to have the space where actually the permission is, if you want to go you can or if you would like to sit and doodle you can, if you need to stretch your legs at any point you can. That permission and that autonomy over, so no one's making me do this, I get to decide, I get to choose, I think is a really incredibly powerful thing.
Yeah, it's also reminded me in what we were just saying is one of the big topics that was spoken about a few times was our education system. And how it's really not fit for purpose for maybe it was never properly fit for purpose for any of us, but particularly these days. I think it's an interesting one. I don't know where I heard it, maybe social media, but it being that our education system was essentially built, Victorian times, to equip us for starting work in the factories. So that's why we have the school day the way that it is. That's why the lessons are structured the way that they are, because they were actually getting us ready to become factory workers. And we're not factory workers anymore.
we're sitting here as two individuals with obscure job titles that have nothing to do with factory work. So, yeah, I think it's just something to reflect on. It being something that has been so for so long that I was having a conversation with someone recently about being sort of dismantling systems. And they were saying that it was John Robson, Darren's brother. So we've got a mention of both brothers on this podcast. So he was talking about this idea of dismantling systems and the fact that so often we want to kind of, infiltrate the system, but it takes so much effort and we don't really know how, we don't know where to begin. And actually what is hugely valuable is building a system that sits on top of another system so that eventually the scales will tip towards the system that operates better. And it's not necessarily going in all guns blazing. It's not fighting it, because I think I definitely get on my high horse sometimes and want to fight the system. But and I'm sure our young people do as well. But I think this idea of sitting on top of the system and adding something and plugging into a system so that it almost creates a mirror of, these are the bits actually that you need to work on, and these are the bits that aren't working anymore, and these are the bits that someone else might be able to come in and help to change. And it's a slow process.
I think as well, for me, if we're going deeper, sorry everyone, that word keeps coming up, but my question is, what's the motivation for keeping it the same? Who wants to keep it the same? Why do they want to keep it the same?
Yeah.
Because there are often other agendas going on, as we know. Yeah. Whatever that agenda is, whether it's financial or political or whatever reason, but why do you want to keep it the same? And I know that when I heard about the history of the education system, one element that came up was that part of turning people into factory workers was to teach them by rote, not by curiosity and openness and exploration.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like the generation we have now, or maybe for quite a while now, we've had a few generations where, in fact, openness and curiosity and exploration is a better approach for education than this rote system, which keeps people very in almost a state of apathy. It kills off curiosity. And I know the wonderful Ken Robinson did loads of talks on the lack of creativity in schools in the current education system and how damaging that was. For any listeners who haven't looked up Ken Robinson, do. He's got a lovely TED talk and some other talks online and says some great stuff on this. So that to me is the deeper question of who wants to keep it the same and why do they want to keep it the same.
Yeah.
So sometimes when these big systems aren't challenged, I am a bit suspicious sometimes of what's really going on.
Yeah.
Which shows to some degree maybe a lack of care for human beings as a whole. That there are certain groups that prefer to be in a better position than a lot of us, but it's not a reason not to make changes, and there are things you can do day to day, and teachers are up against it. And like in any profession, there are good and bad within that, and there are some very genuinely passionate teachers. I had a wonderful teacher at school who was the one person in my whole life who ever saw me for, I think, I've never forgotten her. In fact, I'm still in contact with her, from 40 years on. Yeah. So this is incredible. And teaching is a wonderful job, but I certainly found it hard when I did it because of the system I was in, because I was teaching English, a creative subject in my mind. And I couldn't even choose what books the children could read, the ones that were relevant to them, that had context for them, more modern fictions. So I think it's quite a big topic. Obviously, we're not going to solve it in this conversation. But I think what I admired with your guests was they were very much demonstrating that, not to criticize everybody in that system, but just to say the system's not working for the children it's trying to care for and nurture and grow into the future generation. Yeah. How can we do that with our current system?
Yeah, I definitely hear that. And I think it was that they were sort of coming in, every single one of our guests were coming in to support it and to make changes. Yeah, in their own way.
And doing it in their own way, and doing it by going into schools and working with schools, providing a service to a school, like what Katrina does as well. I mean, Hers was a topic of grief, which sounds more niche, but it's not, because grief is quite encompassing, not just about the loss of somebody through death, is it? It's a much greater topic than that.
And it's universal. It's, we all lose things.
Yes. Yeah. I must say that was a lovely episode with Katrina, and she's an impressive woman. I think what she's done, she's still young.
Yeah.
and she's doing and done an awful lot.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate to call her a friend of mine. And in fact, I'm going to her wedding. By the time that this is aired, she will be a wife. So
that's so beautiful. Yeah, she and she obviously works with schools and is always adapting her own approach to work better with schools. And it sounds like she provides some amazing tools for them. So again, through her own pain, her purpose, with integrity, with authenticity, and in fact, talking about the word integrity, that's maybe one aspect of authenticity that I think for me is part of it. Integrity to me is walking your talk.
Yeah.
So it's not telling someone else to develop personally if I'm not doing it myself. That kind of
really
thing.
Big, yeah. I think it's that mirror thing that I said earlier, is like, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, where have I come from? Where am I going? How do I show up right now? As you say, how do I do it with integrity?
I think that's a journey rather than a destination for me, 100%. Integrity, because there's so many areas of your life that you need to tweak. I think, when it comes with working with young people, it's about honesty and transparency, and about being as real as you can be, and being as, so it's a good quality to be wanting to develop and to be trying to develop if you're not even there. So it's not, we're not saying you have to be all sorted and all authentic.
No. No.
We're just saying you should be reaching for that. It's part of your journey, is to get to that place. And,
we're never fully
it's
formed.
a humble place.
We're never fully formed.
No, but I think that shows our potential, actually, Maisie. I do.
Yeah.
I think that means that there's if we can make such a big mess, we can make also the flip side of that. So there will be some cynics laughing at my utopian dream, but I do believe that.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of a coaching ethos for me, is a belief in a better potential.
Yeah, belief in a brighter future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why did you call it Coaching Our Future Generations, just out of curiosity?
Ooh, good question. So
why not youth coaching?
Youth coaching. So originally we were going to call it youth coaching. I think it relates back to sort of what we've been saying. First of all, youths, what does that mean? I think it doesn't encompass what we were talking about, and actually what we're talking about are the generations of our future, our collective future. We are not going to be here forever. And I think it spoke to the depth at which we were talking and had the conversations, because it's something that these conversations are going to continue to be aired. I imagine, I don't know, I don't have a time machine, so I don't know when the end date of their existence will come, but I think it will be almost time capsule to look back and think about how we were thinking about our future generations. And I think it was really important for me to add the hour in there. We had a conversation about it. We thought, is it just future generations? Is it youth generations? And we really thought about the words. And I think the hour throws in this idea of like collective responsibility. So it's that our generation, like that our future generations, because we are a collective and we have the potential to shape and mold and change and influence and do all of those lovely things that we kind of want to do in our lifetime. And to examine that and to look at that and to really show up for them is kind of what's been reflected, I suppose, in a lot of the different conversations. And it belongs to us. They belong to us. The future belongs to us. Yeah.
We're responsible for creating that future.
We are. Yeah.
I think, one of the issues in the world today is a lot of division. And that happens in culture, within races, and it also happens within age groups.
Yeah.
And it's very sad, because that's not the reality of life. We are all connected, we all have impact on each other. One part of the world has an impact on another part of the world. It just exists, whether we like it that way or not. It just exists, and all of us can reflect back on some of the issues in our own childhood that maybe didn't create the best future for ourselves. So why do we want to repeat that pattern? So I loved that you brought in our generations, and you put that word in, a small little 3-letter word, but a very, like you say, encompassing word. And in fact, our also almost has the feeling of arms around.
It's holding, isn't it?
A holding, and it has, to me, it has care and compassion in it, and curiosity as well.
Yeah,
all in that little 3-letter word. So it was I think a really good title. Yeah, lovely.
Thank you.
Just reflecting as well, because I'm hoping that there are some coaches listening who have never considered working with young people, maybe put themselves outside that realm for different reasons, or just gone down a sort of straight path of this is what coaching is, and gone straight into the adult world without thinking there are other types of coaching. First, there's 2 questions I have. Is one, what do you love about working with young people? I can answer to that too. But 2, why work with young people? Why is it such a group that are good to work with? Or, what reasons would you say for coaches to consider it at least?
I think it's my answer's similar for both, actually. It forces you to look at yourself. It forces you to look at areas in yourself that you need to work on, or hadn't considered, or it's almost a smack in the face of, oh wow, okay, that's where I need to be, or that's what I need to bring.
I was just thinking about maybe a small group of people that have already switched off now because they don't want to know too much about themselves. But but that's a great point, though. Yeah, you can't you can't hide too much.
No, there's not much hiding that you can do. I think, it's confronting, it's challenging, but the reward goes beyond what's tangible. So it's sort of, and it's maybe back to this sort of future generations thing. It's out of comprehension. You've got no idea where that young person's going to go off and what they're going to do. But hopefully, and I think if you do show up authentically, if you do show up just as you, if you do kind of make space and time for the young person, you will have a resonance, a reverberation. You will create a ripple, and that's going to surpass your wildest expectations. So kind of it's a bit airy fairy. It's a bit of a fluffy way of looking at it, but it becomes bigger than you. I think with adults you can see the change. You can see that they've done that, and then that's changed, and then they've let me know, because whereas young people, they've got a whole life ahead of them, but you may have been that person for them, and that gives a deep sense of satisfaction.
And it's not fluffy because each of your guests had their own person. So Stephen had Dave. Ashley had somebody. Everybody had somebody that popped up in their lives somewhere. I think somebody that listened to them, even just for a minute, who then made them go, "Oh, hang on, do I want to carry on down the path I'm on, or shall I maybe try that way?" So, so you had a lot of evidence in the podcast series itself that works.
That's true.
And like for myself, Heather Savini, my teacher, I'm going to say her name out loud because she and I know she didn't just impact me, but she was a special woman, and is a special woman. And it was literally, I think, 30 seconds with her that I held in my heart for a long time, until a moment when I actually heard what she said. Because I didn't hear it at the time, but I remembered it and I heard it later on. So I also think they are a really interesting group of people, young people. There's so much more to them than what a lot of people think. So much more depth. And when you get a chance to awaken that curiosity, they're full of ideas and they're full of energy. They're honest and direct. They'll pull no punches if given the space to be unafraid, to feel safe. So, for me, I just was in awe sometimes at what I would see opening up or blossoming or just being said, even sometimes, even when it was cheeky and a bit out of line. I would just admire, their courage sometimes, but also to see the heartbreaking things that they have to deal with. And there's something we haven't talked about today, but the issues around the porn industry and sexuality that young people, because they've got access to the internet, there's some terrible statistics coming out about the impact that the rates of violent behavior is going up, violent sexual behavior is going up because of what people are witnessing, that industry itself is becoming more violent, that there's a lot of exploitation. And so you've got young men and young women watching things potentially on the internet at a very young age and really interpreting sexual relationships in a very, very bad way and having some very negative experiences. Young women in very vulnerable situations. I heard some terrible stories with the young women I worked with and had a few confronting conversations with some of the young men. To me, that is a very dark place that often isn't spoken about enough. So there's just that one, and there's social media, and they need help from people that care, and they do need help. They do need mentoring, and they do need coaching or good role models. There are some wonderful organisations out there that coaches can even volunteer with to test the waters, isn't there? Like Young Women's Trust and I don't know if you know any others, Maisie, that you know of, but there are plenty out there.
I do know Young Women's Trust. There's a lot of, a lot of our guests actually have spoken about. It's a really interesting point that you've raised there on the sexualization of our young people and the fact that these things need to be talked about. I think if it sits uncomfortably, then it's probably because it needs to be spoken about. It's asking our young people what they perceive as normal, because actually, I can vouch for my own experience. It's not until maybe in the last 5 years or so that I've sort of thought sexually, what is normal? And, that really wasn't what I thought it was, or because, we end up sort of playing out what we think we know as young adults. So, being able to have conversations with young people about what is your normal. I know it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. I know that it's a bit and strange and we don't want to talk about it, but I think they're conversations that need to be had.
Absolutely.
Yeah
It's actually a passion of mine. It sounds a weird thing to be passionate about, but whether this is appropriate to say or not, but I'm just going to say it. So as a child who was sexually abused, that's where some of it comes from. As an adult, because of that, ended up in unsafe situations. If I was now a young person currently with the internet world, I do not know what could have happened to me. A lot worse than what did happen to me. And I think that's motivates me. And then listening to the young people I've worked with, listening to their stories, because I'm quite open about the topic. And I was a midwife and I worked with teenage pregnancy, young women who were pregnant and other things. And, I've heard lots of stories and been shocked in a very sad and heartbreaking way to see the route that some people have fallen into, the pressures they've felt, the lack of voice that young women feel. And I know Halim shared a very simple but powerful story of a speech he gave when he was asked to talk about misogyny. So it is a topic that needs to be spoken about, and probably why I had to mention it, because I know it's very real for young people. It's a very real issue. There's an organisation that I follow on Instagram, a young woman who started something, who posts, reposts tweets and messages that young men in private schools have sent to young women that are just so offensive. I don't want to say anything now. So it is a very real topic, and that's just one area that, you don't force young people to talk about, but it's likely it does come up in conversations. And I think it's something as a coach for me and as a mentor that I needed to feel comfortable to talk about, and I needed to know how to say it. And I did lots of training around different aspects of that, because it's a big topic, because of the internet, because of how you see young women and young men presenting themselves online sometimes in a very sexualized way. There's lots of very big topics that's impacting their lives.
Yeah.
So to be let into those spaces, to be able to maybe change some perspectives and encourage them to empower themselves and find their voice is a a potentially, as you say, resonant kind of opportunity as a coach and a mentor to work with young people in that way, to create a better future for themselves individually, but maybe collectively as well for our own future. I have a lot of compassion, but it requires sometimes a very honest talking as well, from my experience. So that was probably a little bit of a heavy topic for some, but as you say, the uncomfortableness is actually an indication that it needs to be spoken about. So thank you for saying that, Maisie. But I think it was just to give an idea of another big topic that's really impacting young people, and social media is connected to that. They're not separate.
No, they all intertwine, really, don't they?
It's this 24/7 information stream, isn't it? It's just it's got a bright side and a dark side. So so youth coaching, like working with young people, is an incredible opportunity. You really won't know your impact. You don't need to. I think it's just the fact that you can have impact even in small ways. And to me, it's very rewarding and challenging at times too. It's not fluff over the challenges that come, but also very creative, just as you say, as a state of being in the way you can work. So it's amazing. So I was just thinking for tips for coaches, if they were thinking of it, I think the volunteering is a good way to start. If you haven't tried it, it's a good way to see if it's really for you. Yeah,
I think it's a really good idea to just dip your toe in, because you're going to be shown very quickly where you're at. And I think keep at it. If you're passionate about it. I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day that was quite interesting, actually, and we were talking about the difference between working with adults and working with young people, or working with children. And I said to them, well, even when we're working with adults, we're still often working with a child.
Yes. All those belief systems we have come from somewhere.
We might have mechanisms to get in the way, but we are ultimately often working with a child. So I think that's for anybody that is working with adults, remember that there's children in there as well, and hold them in mind, hold them gently, because it's likely not all their needs were met when they were young. So
yeah, that's true. And I talked about that when I interviewed people, Francis, in the mental health series that we did. We talked about those needs that aren't met, and what comes up in a coaching space it's going to come up in a coaching space, not just in a therapy space,
whether you like it or not.
Exactly. And so being prepared for that and understanding that actually gives you more scope as a coach and more understanding and power. So I think it's a lovely thing to talk about that child in all of us, that hurt child as well as the positive one.
I've got a picture of myself sort of sitting, staring at me as I do the podcast as a little girl.
I've got one on my phone now and one by my bed. And I wake up every morning as a reminder to reparent, to take care of her, and to allow her to find out what she wants. So it's a beautiful thing. So being a utopian dreamer myself, I wanted to ask you, Maisie, if you could dream a future for our young people, what would it look like? And that can include education, that can include anything you want. What would it look like for you if you could dream a future for what would be good for our young people to create that future generation?
Big question. And you know what springs to mind is feral children. And what I mean by that is children and young people that have the ability to be free, and I think connected to nature. So I think it was a big passion of Darren's, actually, but I also share the fact that as human beings we need to be connected to nature. I think as young people we need to be connected to nature. We need to tap back into aligning ourselves with the rhythms of life and of the seasons, and it's making me sound a little bit hippy dippy, but I really truly believe that young people find themselves when they have the freedom to just be creative. I think I'm sort of hearing echoes of older generations saying, oh well, in my day we'd play outside and we'd play with sticks and you have fun. And I think I want to say, let's give our children the chance to do that again.
Yeah.
And the permission to do that again. I think we can be incredibly judgmental, but actually it's the adults that are giving them the screens to sit in front of, and it's the adults that are not spending the time engaging them because they're too, this or that. So yeah, utopia. Children with autonomy and love and care and support. And I mean, we touched on cultures earlier, but I personally love the idea of an intergenerational way of being, of living, of existing. So
the village.
Yeah, it takes a village to raise a child. I think we've lost our way a bit in the West with the this idea of a nuclear family. And actually, I think it would make sense to go back to tapping into our communities, tapping into the wisdom of our elders and the wisdom of our children.
Yeah, that's really lovely, because I can vouch that all the craziness of my childhood, I was brought up in the country. And if I hadn't had that place to go, I may have been in a worse state than I actually was by the time I was 18. So, and even now, it's my everything for my own well-being is standing at a tree, discovering some awe and wonder in all the chaos. Connecting to something larger in all the chaos, having a sense of connection, to seeing the beauty of a flower growing in a cracked paving stone when everything around you looks like that, and how nature fights for itself and it carries on. There's so many messages in nature when you can let yourself sit with it. It's not a small thing. So, and I think, to be honest, you said it sounded a bit hippy-dippy, but I think more and more people are starting to feel that,
only
even people that live in the cities. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That's just me, so like it or lump it.
And is it actually right to say it's hippy-dippy? Because we are part of nature. We are not separate.
Yeah, we're not.
We didn't arrive here from some strange planet. We came from and with the planet. And so I don't think it's hippy-dippy. It's a bit like this thing that we now have organic food, when 150 years ago all food was organic. We didn't call it that.
It's a bizarre world, isn't it?
So I think it's that same thing of that, and that was one of my things I wanted to do but didn't quite achieve when I worked with young people. So I wanted to take the young people I worked with who lived in quite a difficult area of a town, high social problems and drugs, etc., to this place in the country that I knew of. I wanted to get them out there to see that there was something different. So I think it's a beautiful and uncomplicated and unexpensive utopian dream on that front, Maisie. It costs nothing. And sometimes the best answers are the simplest ones, aren't they? And I think for me, I'd like the education system to look a bit more like a school I visited in the UK here in Totnes. There's a progressive school where they showed me the science room and the science lessons, and there was just all this stuff in the room. And I said, how do you do this? And they said, well, the children come in and they decide what they want to be curious about, what they want to explore. And we use that as the door to a whole pile of information that we're ready for, but they've started the process, and they question and they ask, and they had this approach to nearly every lesson of following the child's curiosity, but providing a room of exploration where they could start, like all these curious objects and curious things, and I was fascinated by it, and thinking how that very much fits in with our natural human nature when children, where we're picking up sticks and we're what's this mummy and what's that mummy, and somebody pointed out to me the other day that now we're seeing young people with screens from sitting in their prams with screens now, and I don't hear so many children as I walk down the road going, what's this, mummy? Why, mummy? I don't hear those questions. Why is this sky blue, daddy? I'm hearing that less and less, which is quite sad. So I think it's a very powerful point that you make of let's get people back in nature, back to what is real and true, and where we can find a bit of ourselves in the greater things that are around us when we're in the country than we can in a city or in a restricted environment of some sort. So, and I think we need to dream things into being. We need to dream first to make them happen.
Yeah. I think that's what I do with my poetry, is write a blueprint or an idea and bring it into existence.
Well, the Wright brothers dreamed about planes, didn't they? Dreamed about flying. They dreamed about it before they made it happen. Then they went and did their research, and they followed the trail. And I think nature is a great place to dream in as well, is it not? It's
definitely.
Kind of the burdens of the everyday life can slip off of you, and you can go into a dreaming place. And I think at the moment, a lot of young people are feeling they're dreaming of fame and Louis Vuitton bags and things like that, which are all not deep and long-lasting things, and they're impermanent. If we can encourage young people to dream bigger and brighter about themselves, they don't have to be, David Beckham. You can do great things day to day. People like Katrina and Stephen and all your guests that do every day great things in a humble way, without fame, without acknowledgement, without huge crazy wages. They're just doing their things. So,
and we'll acknowledge them now.
yes,
we'll
exactly.
Give them the
That's
acknowledgement and the round of applause that they need and deserve, because as you say, they're doing the work and they are holding our future generations.
And Maisie, what about your dreams for your own future? Because you're doing this course, you're doing other things. You're a poet. I've heard some of your poetry. You're on Instagram, aren't you? What's your Instagram tag name if people want to have a listen?
My Instagram tag is Maybe, which is not spelt maybe. It's MAI and then the letter B with an underscore. So Maybe _. And I do. I post almost as a sort of catharsis for myself. I post little snippets of my poetry online and give myself permission to dream, as you just said. I'm collecting my thoughts to come up with an answer for the big question you just asked me. What do I want?
That one on you.
What's my dream? Yeah. So obviously I'm doing this course at the moment, which is incredibly insightful and just beautiful, because it's giving me a whole sort of arsenal of tools and things that I need, whatever my future might look like. I see it almost as a journey to opening more doors. So my dreams are that I get to financially support myself doing something that aligns with, how I show up in the world. So as I've said, I enjoy coaching. I enjoy being with other people. I really enjoy being with groups of people. So sort of facilitating workshops and things like that. Coming up with creative novel ideas where people can just be and explore is exciting for me. So if there's anybody out there that's looking for a facilitator, then do get in touch.
Are you on LinkedIn as well, Maisie?
I am on LinkedIn,
aren't you?
So you can find me. So it's Maisie Barlow on LinkedIn. And I would welcome you to, just get in touch and send me a message. Yeah, if anything has resonated with you, because as I say, I think my main passion is people. I love connecting with people because I feel like I get closer to myself in relationship with other. And the more that I do that, I really went through a little period of sort of recluse and over Christmas this year and thought I'll just cut myself off and sort of see what that's about. And when I started reaching back out to people, I realized, oh no, I'm one of these people that really enjoy being with others. And as I say, I learn more about me. I am in the Midlands now, but I've just passed my driving test, so I can get about as well. So
oh, well done.
So I'm just thinking dreams. I'm thinking of a song that says, I think it's a TikTok video actually. It says, I'm living my best life. I wake up with the sunrise. And I think that for me, so living in rhythm with nature and living in rhythm with being able to show up for people while still tending to myself and my own garden is my ultimate dream. And that's what I'm working on at the moment, is learning what feels good for me and what doesn't. So a broad answer to a big question.
Yeah, because you've got a background in, is it performance? You've got a background in as well. So you've got lots of different things you bring into potentially bring into a workshop, and your poetry on Instagram is you speaking it.
Yeah.
And you'll see if people watch the videos, they're quite powerful. And I think, did I see you on YouTube once, or did I dream that? Did you make a video that you put out?
Probably, yeah.
I can't remember. Was it just Instagram something? But yeah, but you're very good at
Thank
it.
you.
You're very good. You know how to look and say things right into somebody's eyes almost. It felt like you were looking into my eyes. Yeah, so I was thinking, all these creative elements, do they come into your workshops, or is it just coaching based? How do you approach, or do you sort of depend on what's wanted from you?
I think that's my main thing, is that I enjoy the process. So I actually enjoy sort of getting a brief, working with an organisation to sort of work out what their needs, wants, desires are from the workshop, and then creating something that kind of fits within that. So the creative process is part of that, of me, okay, so maybe we could, I don't know, bring out some figurines here, or maybe we could do something with a little bit of paint and paper, maybe we could do something a little bit sensory to bring the energy levels up, and then always having something in my back pocket as read the room and see how people are feeling, because I think we've all been in workshops where the energy's a bit dead. So it's I think it can be whatever you want it to be, but I've got lots of, as I say, tools that I can
you have
pull on. Yeah.
I think you're being quite modest about those tools, but I guess this is what Darren was trying to say to you, wasn't it? Like, he saw a lot in you, and he was saying, stop hiding, Maisie, and come out and shine. And he was saying the same to me too. So he that's why I recognise it in you, because I've seen it in myself, because we can confuse shining, and this is with being arrogant.
Yeah.
And actually, when I look at the people that inspire me, whether it was Nelson Mandela, they just shone, and they weren't being arrogant. They were just being themselves.
Yeah.
And some people do become arrogant sometimes, but the most people that touch your hearts are the people that inspire just by being themselves. And as that speech says, giving other people permission to shine their light by shining your own. So it's well, I wanted to give you a moment to just sparkle a little bit, because, you put a lot into this podcast series. We're very grateful to you. I think it has a lot of gifts from your guests, and part of that was due to the space that you held and the questions that you asked. So I look forward maybe one day to Maisie Barlow podcast.
Yes, maybe it's in the pipeline.
Yes. Yeah, probably with deep in the title somewhere.
Yeah, it's got to include that.
Yeah. We're both a bit deep divers, so we've had a fairly good conversation. It's a conversation I know that I could dive even deeper into, because I think this is quite a big topic as well, talking about young people and things. So we haven't been able to cover it all in the podcast series, but you certainly had a really good go at it, and I hope it's raised enough curiosity in some coaches to maybe try it and explore it and give the gift of that to the young people that so badly need it.
100%. And thank you for the opportunity, because it's been illuminating, lots of brightness going on, but it's been a really illuminating and eye-opening series, and it's just affirmed the sort of space that I'm in, and as you said, been able to give me a chance to sparkle and to say, oh, this is what I show up with, little Maisie, we can do this. Not so little Maisie.
Not so little
Maisie
that's
anymore.
Wonderful. But it's been really lovely to do this episode with you and bring together the threads of the series, because it was quite a deep dive. So I think it's good just to go over some things again for our listeners. I think it's been really helpful. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope some people get in contact with you.
Lovely.
Because I think it'll be worth it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maisie.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For over 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the Association for Coaching and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or visit our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. Explore our new digital learning hub and enjoy our extensive library of on-demand webinars, signature programs, member benefits, interviews, podcasts, and a portfolio of live events to help you develop and increase your coaching expertise.